What will be each Six Flags park's next roller coaster? I'm not talking about how soon they'll be added in, because realistically every Six Flags park is bound to get a new coaster at some point in time, even if it's 50 years from now. What I'm looking at is the most likely candidate for the park's next major thrill coaster in their lineup. We know Six Flags likes working with Rocky Mountain Construction, Premier Rides, S&S, and there seems to be a resurgence in their relationship with Bolliger and Mabillard. We can also assume that Six Flags won't be working with Intamin, Gerstlauer, and Great Coasters International anytime soon, looking at their past. Using my nerdy coaster enthusiast knowledge and judging the likelihood of what new ride could be added at each park, this is what I've came up with. Frontier City in Oklahoma City is starting the list off with just 5 coasters. Realistically, they could use just about anything. Some popular rumors include an RMC Raptor, an SNS 40 Freespin, a Premier Ride Skyrocket 2, or any other compact thrill ride that could best fit into the park's spending budget. It likely wouldn't be something original, but this park does deserve a true standout attraction, so in my eyes, adding an RMC Raptor is perfect for Frontier City. Another park that suffers from neglect is the Great Escape in Queensberry, New York. This park has 6 coasters and a more appropriate standout attraction than Frontier City, though still, I think they can do much better than Comet. Call me unoriginal, but a standard RMC Raptor would once again be a perfect fit for this park. It's unlike anything anywhere close, and it wouldn't break the bank either. Lerond in Montreal, Canada can go in a little bit of a different direction than the past 2 parks. I think this park's stance and opportunity is brighter than that of Frontier City and Great Escape. They have no direct competition, yet are still long overdue for a new coaster. The most popular rumor for a while has been the RMC conversion of Le Monster, a large racing wood coaster. This ride seems to be running reliably now, but a few years back it suffered from lots of downtime and in general has never been the most popular. I hear from those who got to ride it that this ride is pretty boring and doesn't do a whole lot. All of these things sound like a prime candidate for an RMC conversion. Given this park's lack of investment in the past, I think it's safe to assume that RMC Le Monster would be a pretty short RMC, but I'm personally totally fine with that, as I have full faith they could come up with something pretty good here. Six Flags America in Bowie, Maryland is yet another park that receives little attention from the chain, but the new park president has expressed interest in an RMC conversion for Roar. It's funny that I'm predicting RMCs for each of the 4 parks so far, but that's because they're some of the only parks in the chain without one. Roar is an outdated, rough, and unpopular attraction that's obsolete with Wild One in the same park. If you RMC Roar, I almost guarantee that there will be a significant return on investment. Six Flags Darien Lake near Buffalo, New York has only been recently acquired by Six Flags, so we don't have much history to work with. Before this year, I would have said that Predator could really use the RMC treatment, and that would have been a perfect fit for this park. But now that it's gotten GCI's Titan track, I think it's safe to assume that that's out of the question for the time being. Instead, we have to look at a new ground-up coaster that's probably going to be relatively inexpensive. As much as I want to say RMC Raptor, I don't think they necessarily have to build something that compact. You can build something like a Premier Rides launch coaster that isn't too small in footprint but also doesn't eat up a lot of money. Think Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. I can see that being a great fit at this park, especially because they could really use a good intermediate coaster here. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in Vallejo, California just received a family coaster called Sidewinder Safari, so I think it's safe to assume that their next new coaster will be thrilling. I think this park will need something compact, but the problem is they already have all the clone models Six Flags has been known to add to their parks. The one exception would be an RMC Raptor clone, but Railblazer is just down the road at California's Great America, so that'll never happen. While this could go in many different directions, I'm going to go on a limb and say that they get an extreme launch coaster, and if I had to take a guess, maybe a Vekoma. Six Flags hasn't worked with this manufacturer in a long time, but once had close ties to them. I think if they saw the work they've been doing overseas, and maybe if small parks like Codaland can inspire them enough, you can see a modern Vekoma coaster added at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in the future. Six Flags Fiesta Texas in San Antonio is an interesting one to predict. This park gets a lot of investment from Six Flags, and they like to try new things here. At some point, since they're running out of room, I think they're going to have to get rid of Pandemonium to make way for a new coaster, and with the removal of spinning, it might make sense for them to get an S&S Axis coaster. I can totally see Six Flags eating up the Axis model, and I think the most likely park to get one in the chain is Six Flags Fiesta Texas. Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey is one that I've thought about for quite some time. This park has very few gaps in their coaster lineup, but considering their one launch coaster is a monster, I could see them scaling down and building something tamer with LSMs. I know a lot of people have thrown around the name East Coast Racers, and I agree a West Coast Racer style ride would be a great fit here. But logistically, I don't know where they're going to fit in a racing coaster, so I think it's more likely to be a traditional launch coaster. Also, this park doesn't have a ride that goes backwards, so something like Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando, once again, might be a perfect fit here. Next, I'm going to steal Airtime Thrill's idea for this one and say that Six Flags Great America outside of Chicago will get a clone or near clone of Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. It's already been done once at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I think it makes so much sense for this park. There's no single rail coaster anywhere close, increasing marketability, and the size difference compared to the prototypes makes perfect sense given this park's size and attendance. I also think there is room in this park that you could add this in if you took out a few minor attractions, so it's a fairly probable addition for this park in the future. Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California has almost every type of coaster imaginable. The one exception would be a Giga coaster, but realistically Six Flags will never build a Giga here. This one is quite difficult to decide, but the best idea off the top of my head is probably a water coaster like Aquaman at Six Flags Over Texas. I think one of those Power Splash models would do great here in the Southern California heat. And if the park wants marketability, since they tend to break records with their new coaster editions, build the looping model. They could make it the first looping water coaster in the world, so I think that's a pretty fair prediction for this park. Six Flags Mexico has two near elite coasters that draw in coaster fans, but the drop after that is huge, down to their SLC Batman or spinning coaster Joker. I think this park needs a solid third place coaster, and I have a few ideas. Because this park doesn't have a launch coaster, and because I'd imagine Six Flags would be willing to spend money at Six Flags Mexico, I think an SNS launch coaster like Max Force at Six Flags Great America makes a lot of sense here. Give them a punchy launch, maybe a short but sweet layout. It doesn't need to be financially overboard. I'd be fine if it didn't last long, but a quality launch coaster that you can market as Mexico's first would be perfect. I'm actually going to predict the same thing for Six Flags New England and Massachusetts. With the removal of Goliath and somewhat likely removal of Flashback in the years to come, that would open up a nice plot of land for something new, of which this park is quite overdue for. Give them a Max Force style ride, and that would actually be perfect here. High quality, but short, so it's still in the realm of possibilities for Six Flags spending. With this park's 11 total coasters, it's surprising to me that they don't have a launch, so let's change that. A while back, I would have said that the last SNS 40 free spin in the chain would go to Six Flags Over Georgia outside of Atlanta, but the more that time passes, the less likely this seems to become, so I'm going to assume Six Flags is done with free spins for the time being. This park has a shockingly deep lineup, and there's not much more I think they could use, but they are missing a launch coaster, so I think an SNS or Vekoma launch coaster is in their future. Either of those options have a very nice ring to them. Six Flags Over Texas near Dallas is another pretty tricky one. Although they don't have a true standout coaster in my opinion, they do have a very well-rounded lineup otherwise. And plus, I can't see Six Flags building something that coaster enthusiasts would consider to be the park's new best attraction. I do think with their renewed relationship with B&M, we could see something like a small wing coaster here. That would be a huge crowd pleaser at this park, so I say go for it. The very last park we'll be covering in this video is Six Flags St. Louis in Missouri, of which I've had my mind locked and loaded on RMC Boss for a while. Matter of fact, I've been told it would have happened by now if it weren't for COVID by staff. I think this is the most likely option for some sort of RMC in the future within the Six Flags chain. An RMC Raptor would also be a good fit here, and I know that was a heavy rumor a few years back, but eventually they're going to have to make a decision with Boss. It just doesn't work here anymore. I think an RMC conversion of Boss would be the best single fit for a park in this entire video. Keep your fingers crossed for Six Flags St. Louis. As much as I love Boss as it is, I think that would be such a slam dunk move for this park. With that being said, that's going to conclude the next most likely coaster at each park in the chain. It's very possible that none of these happen next, but I think we could get lucky and a few of these may end up happening. Only time will tell, but for now leave a like and subscribe if you agree with my picks. Comment what you think the next coasters will be at the Six Flags parks. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.